So this past fall, my husband Ryan and I, we ordered some new furniture. We ordered some shelves for our son's room. And it came in this really nice big box. And as soon as you opened it, you could see right there on the top this 20-page instruction manual with pictures and instructions so you could put this whole thing together. And I don't know how you do these things, but if you're like me, what I like to do is I like to lay out all the pieces so I can see and make sure that I have everything before I start tackling the assembly of the shelves. I wanted to make sure that I had exactly 8 screws when it said I should have 8 screws. And so what I did is I got my little Allen wrench that is always required. And I don't know why Allen wrenches are always required for furniture building, but it's just true. So I got my Allen wrench and I started to put this thing together. I started to put the whole shelf together. And I was so proud of myself. And then afterwards, what I do, this is a little life hack for you, is I tape that Allen wrench and the book of instructions on the bottom shelf. So that is there when I'm going to take it apart and move it again someday. There you go. But that's true for shelves. But what about our relationships? Do we all have relationships in our lives that tend to need some kind of assembly, some tightening up on the bolts, or some re-looking at the instruction sheet again? And this is what we're going to talk about this week on the Daily Dose. How do we reassemble our relationships? Well, here's the thing about relationships. They don't come with an instruction manual. They don't come with an Allen wrench. You can't just get all those pieces together, put it aside and call it done. They seem to also get unassembled nearly as fast as you assemble them if you have relationships like mine. The thing about relationships is that they take work. They take work, they take perseverance, they take more work, they take time, they take empathy and care and listening and understanding. Relationships really take a whole lot. And so that's why I think it's so easy for so many of us to just give up on the relationships in our lives that just seem to sit a little wonky. We just give up on the relationships that don't seem to be working because it is a lot. It's really, really hard. Friendships, parents, siblings, coworkers, roommates, spouses, ex-spouses, your kids, all of these relationships, they take work. Even a relationship with ourselves, it takes work. And relationships are hard. In the past couple of years, I've struggled with some relationships, and I'm sure that you have too. I talk to person after person, day after day, that's struggling with a relationship in their life. Some was because of the pandemic, and some was because of politics. Some is just because of seasonal depression and feeling really down at this time and not knowing how to get out of that. And some, honestly, the relationships are strained because of the lack of attention. They haven't had those bolts tightened up on them. They're not assembled quite properly anymore, so they sit just a little cattywampus. Some kind of relationships in our lives, they naturally ebb and flow and shift and change, but others, when they get all out of whack, they leave a gaping hole in our lives. We find ourselves thinking about them, and we find ourselves feeling this deep longing or this deep emptiness over those relationships. Or maybe you find yourself today in a place where it's not really neglected relationships, but you feel like all you have are surface level relationships. Relationships that don't seem to go deeper. You just have surface level chit chat like the weather or sports and those things, but you never actually get to talking about what really matters, what your soul aches and longs for, those things that you're wrestling with and dealing with. So you feel like your relationships are just kind of surface level and they don't get to what's in your heart and what's in your soul. So how do we reassemble our relationships? Quite honestly, I think that if we were going to name an Allen wrench for reassembling our relationships, it's going to be authenticity. It's living into who God created you to be with all your gifts and all your quirks, with all your struggles and situations, with all your weirdness that you all have. And in order for you to be authentic, what you have to do is you have to be brave, and that's hard for us to do. To be brave to share our stuff, to share our truth, and then to listen to others share their truth. And it makes us uncomfortable. It makes us kind of not always know what to do. It kind of leads us into the unknown. This is really hard. It's really hard for us to be vulnerable with another person, to open up and start talking about what went wrong in your relationship or what feels off in your own soul, to own your mistakes and to ask for forgiveness. That's really hard. Or if it's a relationship that you'd like to grow deeper in, you'd like to move off of the weather and sports and actually have a real conversation in. Sometimes it's best if we just offer something a little bit less vulnerable and see how that's received. Here's an example. So instead of talking about the weather, maybe instead you start talking about how something's going on at work that feels really yucky, and see how they respond to that kind of situation. That'll give you an indicator on whether or not they're empathic and willing to show their authentic self back to you as well. One is somebody that you've had a good relationship for a while. And now that relationship, it seems like those bolts have gotten loosened. That relationship is strained. I think it's hard, but Jesus encourages us to have those hard conversations. Trust me, neither of you want to have that hard conversation, but that's one of the things that God pushes and calls us into. Because when we are able to shine the light on things that have gone wrong, when we're able to kind of loosen up and tighten up those bolts and make it all back into alignment, that's when God does really big work in our lives. Believe me, I would love to avoid tough conversations, but that doesn't really seem to work. It doesn't fix the problem. 1 John 4:7 says, "Beloved, let us love one another, because love is of God, and everyone who knows love is born of God. Those who love not know not God, because God is love." So this week here at Calvary, the team and I are going to spend the week uncovering those relationships that might need to be reassembled in our lives, those relationships that maybe have gone a little cattywampus, a little wonky. So grab your Allen wrench of authenticity and come with us on this journey as we try and reassemble our relationships. See you tomorrow.